Fast Market, everyone. Kevin and Shawn Cruz. We're halfway home with today's show. Now it's time to bring in Mr. Landon Swan. He is the co-founder of Likefolio.com. Landon, three dudes talking about Pinterest. How interesting can this be? But even though I'm not a user of Pinterest, I do like money. So let's talk about trading Pinterest. What do you got for us, Landon?
Sure. Hey, at least we're not talking about Ulta. So, we got Pinterest. I think
Which would be worse.
Relate. That's right. Listen, Pinterest is, I think it's a fantastic company. When you look at, how well they were doing before COVID and how they reacted to that, I mean, they had a huge influx of users, and they were sort of the right place, right time. Unfortunately, that surge has kind of reverted back to the mean a little bit when it comes to new user growth. We're seeing new user growth slow down, but they're still growing, but the pace is just pulling back a little bit. However, their happiness is through the roof. I mean, customers absolutely love this platform, especially when you compare it to some of their competition like Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and those others. So, they're up there at 77%, which is really high for a social network, as you can see from the competition. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, they're all out to make money. They have to do that. And in order to do that, most of those, the bottom four there, are kind of intrusive with their ads. And generally speaking, that's how ads are on the internet. You have to watch something or view something that you don't really want to in order to get to what you want to see. But Pinterest actually has a really brilliant model that they're executing very well on, and that is this discovery model where they've got algorithms that understand what is going to be interesting to you, and they get feedback from the user automatically, and they tailor that to each user. And so people are actually able to discover new brands on Pinterest and use these ads in a way that actually benefits the user, which is unheard of, right? Normally it's so intrusive, but this is actually a way that ads actually help the user. So you can see here that people talking about discovering new brands through Pinterest is up 29% year over year. By the way, their ad revenue is up about 35% on a year-over-year basis. So this tracks. I mean, this is exactly what was happening here. People are discovering new brands, which is basically they didn't know about something. That's Pinterest putting that in front of them. Pinterest getting paid. It's a win-win-win. So the ads are being optimized. They're better for the users, better for the advertisers. They've got this part nailed. They're actually better at this, at growing ad revenue, than they are at growing users. So their ad revenue, as I talked about, is about a plus 35% year over year on a compounded annual growth rate. Their users are growing at 11%. So they're doing better at monetizing the users that they have, not as well at getting new users. And you can see here the surge. The green line is people saying basically, I'm becoming a new user of Pinterest. There's hundreds of ways that they can say that. We call that purchase intent, but nice surge on COVID. The stock followed. Sky's the limit to the moon, and then sort of reality set in. That the new user growth went back to this slower growth. It's still like plus 8% year over year, but it's still a lot slower than I think a lot of investors want to see. So, I guess the recap of this is that, we've got a company that knows how to monetize. They're growing, but not as fast as investors want to see. And if you look at the stock, they're pretty high right now. I mean, before they reported earnings last quarter, they were at around 22. They gapped up on that. They did really well. I think it was plus 12%. They've run up to now around 28, pulled back a little with the markets, but they're still pretty high on their total trend line. You can actually see how well they did last quarter when you compare it to their competition. Snapchat was down 30%, Meta was down 24%, they were up 12%. So when you look at the stock, I think expectations just a bit high right now, and I think that investors are going to be a little turned off by the slowing of growth, but long-term, love this company, love the way they execute on ads. And if they do sell off, or if it sells off with the market on just average growth, then I think that's a great time to pick up shares, but I'm not playing it bullish going into earnings.
Yeah, and Landon, are you looking at this as more the risk is going to be they come out and they can't hit their growth targets? Or do you see the bigger risk maybe being in advertising budgets just in general getting cut as companies start to tighten things up? Is there one area of risk you're really focused on?
For me, I think it's the user growth, honestly. I mean, I think that of all the companies that are going to be affected by ad spend decreasing, I think Pinterest is probably going to be the one least affected because they're so good at what they do. I think it's definitely a concern, and we've seen what's happened with some of these companies over the last week or two, but that's priced in, and so I think the expectations are pretty low there. I think that they can beat on expectations when it comes to ad spend, and I think that they're more likely to disappoint on expectation when it comes to user growth. So there's going to be a little, if I had to predict, I mean, I'm not trying to 100% call my shot and get into their earnings report, but if I had to predict, that's what I would see coming, and I just fear that with stock being up so much recently, that investors could be a little turned off by the slower than average user growth. Maybe it sells off, maybe the market pulls back a little bit, and if so, I think that's a good time to pick up shares on a more long-term basis.
Yeah, Landon, I think you're betting on, if you're looking at a stock like Pinterest, number one, you're looking at a stock that sold off from $89 to $16, now sits right around here. This is a name, if digital ad spend does pick up, like, it's one of those questions. Is it an Amazon that got weak after earnings, or is it a Meta that got incredibly strong after earnings and showed that they were taking care of all these problems? This is going to be a really interesting playoff. So the last question I have for you, is Pinterest a Meta stock move, or is it a Amazon stock move?
Oh, geez, that's tough. I mean, that's tough. I honestly think that I think they're going to move with the markets, and I'd be surprised if it was a huge move. I mean, we've got our earnings score and it is +5, which is disappointing. We want to see a big number, right? Big or small. We like to play it directionally, but we're only +5 out of 100, so we don't really have it going a big move here. But I do think that just the way that they have executed so well on the ad side of things, I think they're insulated is the wrong word. They're not insulated from that threat. It's going to affect them, but it's going to affect them less than everyone else. I think their main issue is they've got to get their user growth numbers up, and we don't see it happening this quarter. We don't see them coming out and saying, hey, user growth is up significantly and investors flock to the stock. I just don't see that happening based on everything that we're seeing. They've got trends supporting them. Shoppable content's up, deal discovery is up, personalization is up. Everything is working in their favor when it comes to how their platform is designed. They're just not getting the huge user growth that we've seen, like in March and April of 2020 when everyone was stuck inside. That's what investors want to see. I think that they've got their expectations maybe a little too high, and they're a little more realistic now. There's not going to be another COVID surge like that, but I think that they got to have really strong user growth in order to get investors flocking to the stock, and I just don't see it on this report.
Landon, we appreciate you coming on as always and bringing the Likefolio data to Fast Market. Have a great day. Thanks for coming on, Landon.
Thanks, guys. Happy Monday.
All right, Shawn. Now,